Good afternoon. Today is February 6th, and welcome to the bill hearings of the Ways and Means Committee. First, we have House Bill 603, and we would like to welcome our wonderful comptroller up. Come on up.
Okay. Hello, Madam Chair and members of the committee. It's great to be back in Ways and Means. All my tax people, woo! Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, wonderful to be here. So this is a bill that is pretty simple. As you know, I'm very focused on modernizing our agency, and we want to make sure as well that people are able to get what is owed to them. Our agency has the honor of running the state's largest anti-poverty and economic mobility program, and that is the Earned Income Tax Credit, a bipartisan program that has shown great success over the years in ensuring that people can move into the middle class. And the EITC, though, one of the problems with it is that often people don't know that they are owed it. They do not claim it on their tax forms, or they're not filing a tax return because they know they don't owe any money and they don't know that they'll get cash back through the EITC. So my agency is working to promote the Earned Income Tax Credit, which this body has done a lot of work to provide for a generous state EITC, and so we want to make sure people can claim it. Now, one way that they know about it is that their employers may tell them about it. So right now in our agency, though, we have a little bit of outdated text in the code that requires us to snail mail, a form or a letter to every employer in the state who may have employees who would qualify for the EITC. Well, as you can guess, many employers don't open their mail, or they move addresses and they don't tell us. So much of those, we send out those letters every year at a cost of $150,000 to the agency, and many of those letters come back to us. It would be much more efficient and much more effective if we could also email all of our employers and tell them about the EITC, and then they could forward that email to their employees. Or they could post the material we share on internal intranets, et cetera. So basically all this bill does is ask for you to give us the flexibility to either snail mail or email all employers to let their employees know about the EITC. That's it, and with that, I will ask for a favorable report.
Okay, questions? Delegate Buckle.
Chair, it's nice to see you back.
Nice to see you.
Our wonderful colleague, Comptroller Lairman. And so I'm just following. So we already require you to do this, right? I'm an employer.
Yes.
I don't ever remember. Maybe my office manager gets it. So this isn't imposing some new mandate on employers.
Nope.
This is just making it easier and quicker and hopefully cheaper for you to do what we want to do anyway.
Yes, exactly.
How do you determine who has employees subject potentially to the EITC?
Usually we just send it to I think we send it to almost every employer who has employees.
Okay, so anybody that's got an EIN number that files through you just automatically send it out. I must have just missed it, I'm sure, somewhere it's in my office. But
So, and well, often, you know, I'm not saying this is you, but often something happens in the mail, people don't receive it, you know, things like that. Yeah.
That definitely happens. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate the clarification.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Delegate Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome. Thank you, Madam Comptroller, for bringing the bill. Would this be an and or it's only an or, and how would you choose if they wanted to receive by one or the other, or would the employer have the option?
It's an or, and so we would I think we would internally do an assessment. If we, for instance, if we don't have an employer's email address, we'll snail mail them. If we keep getting returned snail mail from an employer, we will just keep emailing them. So I think we would we would first look and see, okay, let's look at all our email addresses. Are they good email addresses? Are they not bouncing back? You know, and choose the best address so that we could get this information to folks. Like, because our goal is to get this information to people. And so that's why we need this extra flexibility to make sure that we can actually accomplish that goal.
Okay, thank you. So you'll have a process for the whole thing.
Exactly.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you. That concludes the hearing
Thank you
on
so much.
House 603, and we're going to hop to Delegate Wims, House Bill 634. And if his panel could please come forward, which I believe is Madam Comptroller, DeMarcus Moore, and Tanya Moore.
I think they're gonna have you. Yes. Thank you. Dr. Johnson, and we have to pray. Thank you, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the Ways and Means Committee. I'm here to present Bill HB 634, the Maryland Fair Taxation and Justice Involved Individual Act. This bill would create the Income Tax Reconciliation Program under the Office of the Controller. The program will be eligible for justice-involved individuals who are sentenced to a term of imprisonment of at least 6 months, but no more than 10 years. The Controller deems that this will be good for those who have been incarcerated or who have been charged previously with penalties, etc. Her office will work in creating a payment program for those once they're released. I did want to say, because you have my written testimony, that this bill is very important to me. You've seen me on this committee for the last 2 years, because I started my career at Goshen United Methodist Church in Gaithersburg with prison ministry. There, we were talking with inmates not only in the local Montgomery County Jail, but at Patuxent Institute. And one of the things we found there, besides trying to work with them to get early release and to be repentant, is that some of those had tax issues that at that time I didn't understand because I was in my 20s at that time. So with this bill, and I want to thank the controller in the office for working with my staff and the others for working with us, but also Dr. Johnson, who you're going to hear from last, because she's the one that brought the bill to Senator McCray and myself, and you hear from Cash. So with that, I want to start with our controller and let the panel begin. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Delegate Wims, and thank you, Madam Chair and Vice Chair. Again, for the record, I'm Brooke Learman, the Comptroller of Maryland. I'm pleased today to testify in support of House Bill 634, the Maryland Fair Taxation for Justice Involved Individuals Act. As the state's Chief Revenue Administrator and Fiscal Officer, I believe in creating pathways to economic opportunity for all Marylanders. And we know that those affected by mass incarceration due to systemic challenges within our criminal justice system often have challenges reintegrating into society. But that's what we want. We want people to reintegrate so that they can get good jobs and pay their taxes. And justice-involved individuals who've completed their sentences have fulfilled their obligations to society. So it's important for our communities and our economy to provide them with every chance they have to rebuild their lives. Allowing escalating tax debt to persist after incarceration really constitutes additional punishment beyond their sentence and can significantly hinder their successful reintegration into society. So HB 634 establishes an income tax reconciliation program, which will offer substantial relief to eligible justice-involved individuals who've served between 6 months and 10 years in our correctional facility. And I'll note that this program, you should see an updated fiscal note in your packets, will have no effect where we can handle it with existing resources because we already offer several programs which are complementary, our low-income hardship program and our offer-in compromise program. So this additional program will really be another way for individuals to access that work and those opportunities to implement, to ensure that they do not have this debt sort of weighing them down. My office is well equipped to implement this program efficiently through our modernized payment systems and our new Office of the Taxpayer Advocate. This legislation goes beyond mere tax policy. I really do think it will create economic opportunities and foster stronger communities. By removing unnecessary obstacles for returning citizens, we can bolster Maryland's workforce, support families, and build a more inclusive economy. I'm grateful for the opportunity to engage in this discussion and thank the delegate for bringing this bill, and I urge a favorable report on HB 634. Thanks.
Thank you. We have Cash.
Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Tanea Moore, and I'm the Director of Policy with the Cash Campaign of Maryland. CASH stands for Creating Assets, Savings, and Hope, and we promote the economic advancement for low to moderate income people living in Baltimore and across the state of Maryland. More than half of our clients earn less than $20,000 annually, and one of the services that we offer includes free tax preparation for people earning less than $67,000 annually. We are here in full support of this bill, which addresses the unique financial challenges that justice-involved individuals face, particularly in resolving tax debts accumulating during incarceration. This bill has several key components that are important to CASH. One, addressing economic barriers. Justice-involved individuals often face significant barriers upon reentry, such as securing housing, employment, and financial stability. Unresolved tax debts adds another hurdle. Two, supportive measures. The supportive measures in this bill ensures fair opportunity for financial recovery without undue hardship. Three, promoting equity. Waiving penalties helps reduce economic disparities and aligns with Maryland's commitment to equity. Four, generating revenue recovery. By removing barriers to compliance, this bill increases the likelihood of recovering outstanding tax revenues while empowering individuals to rebuild their lives. This legislation strengthens Maryland's efforts to foster equity, economic stability, and social justice. Passing this bill demonstrates leadership in creating fair opportunities for all Marylanders, including those who seeking reentry opportunities. The Cash Campaign of Maryland encourages a favorable report for this crucial step towards a more inclusive and equitable tax system. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and everyone on the committee. I am Dr. Carmen Johnson. I'm the founder of Helping Ourselves to Transform. I am also an impacted woman who has been a business owner in the state of Maryland for over 30 years. I am a serial tax filer and have always been a serial taxpayer. And my situation led to the fact that I was politically hit. I went to trial. I ultimately lost. I was arrested at trial. I did not have time to handle my business affairs, my personal affairs, or anything like that. I spent 3 years at a prison camp, and me at that camp, I was totally mentally dissolved. And I thought that my CPA and my bookkeeper and my family was handling my affairs. I came home 3 years later to a disaster of finances. Even though this bill right here that we're talking about is for everyone that's justice impacted, but for me, I speak for the business owners. I speak for the professionals. I speak for the former elected officials. I speak for the military veterans that have found themselves in the jaws of the justice system. We seem to go under the radar, and our needs are different than others that are justice impacted, and people don't seem to understand that. I've been home for 7 years. I've supported all types of justice-involved bills, and it's difficult to get people to support professionals and business owners that find themselves behind the wall. We have different needs, we have different issues, and our main issues is dealing with the finance aspect of it. I came home to taxes that supposed to had been filed. I had to file those. I owed taxes. It was just a mess. I urge you guys to really understand that professionals that find themselves in this situation, we need help. And with that said, I hope that you guys vote favorable. I thank the comptroller. I thank the delegate. I thank you all for listening to my cry. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
That concludes the testimony on House Bill 634. Moving to House Bill 614. And I think Matt Dudzik, yep, come on up.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Matt Dudzik on behalf of the Office of the Comptroller, and I am here to present House Bill 614. HB 614 is a simple bill that provides our office with some clarity regarding how we calculate the local earned income credit. So right now, Maryland taxpayers can claim this local credit against their county income taxes, and we determine the amount of that credit using a formula that is based on that county's income tax rate. It's a straightforward process, but where we need a little bit of clarity is when it comes to counties that have more than one income tax rate. As this body knows, counties have the ability to adopt bracketed taxes, and right now there are 2 counties, Anne Arundel County and Frederick County, that do so. And in those cases, our office then has to decide which tax rate should be considered the county income tax rate. HB 614 gives us that clarity by stating that we use the lowest county tax rate. We will be submitting one technical amendment to address Frederick County, as their income tax rates are flat rates rather than marginal rates, and we just want to make sure that they are, of course, included in this as well. I will have that ready for committee staff shortly. I'm happy to take any questions, and I urge a favorable report on HB 614.
Okay, are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 614. House Bill, wait. No, it was just you, yep.
Yep.
House Bill, there was a 1 in this column, so I thought there was somebody else, but it's just you. House Bill 617, go ahead, whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon once again. Once again, for the record, Matt Dudzik on behalf of the Office of the Comptroller, speaking today on House Bill 617. I'm sure anyone here who has ever called into a call center is familiar with the disclaimer that the call may be monitored for training and quality control purposes. If you call into any of the Comptroller's call centers, you'll receive a similar notice. And our authority to record these calls can be found in the Tax General article. That being said, if you look at the language that gives us this authority, it references calls into the Comptroller's automated call distribution system, or ACD system. This was certainly cutting-edge call center technology at the time that the language was originally drafted. But many call centers have moved away from ACD systems. They've started adopting other models. There's priority-based distribution models, interactive voice response. The technology has evolved as far as call centers are concerned. So HB 617 is very simple. It just removes this outdated reference to ACD systems and instead just refers to calls into the Comptroller's call centers. Certainly not the most exciting change in the world, but it does mean that if we upgrade our call center technology, we don't have to worry about losing our authority to record phone calls. Thank you. Once again, I'm happy to take any questions, and I urge a favorable report.
Okay, are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 617. House Bill 619. Go ahead.
Once again, for the record, Matt Dudzik on behalf of the Office of the Comptroller, this time speaking on House Bill 619. So HB 619 is specifically looking at business-to-business sales between cannabis businesses. So back when the Cannabis Reform Act was passed, sales and use tax exemption was included for sales between 2 cannabis businesses that were licensed under the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Cannabis article. And just to clarify, this is specifically one licensed business selling product to another licensed business for resale. So sales tax is still collected at the point of sale, but these business-to-business sales are exempt. There are a few reasons why this exemption exists. It avoids tax pyramiding. Also, these types of business-to-business sales can be surprisingly complex to audit and enforce sales tax measures on. So we've been operating with this sales tax exemption between these businesses without issue. However, last year, a new type of cannabis business was added, which is cannabis nurseries. But when they were established under a registration model rather than a license. Because the existing sales and use tax exemption specifically references licensed businesses, it does not apply to sales between a registered nursery and a licensed cannabis business. We have reached out to various stakeholders, to sponsors and folks who are involved with the decision to regulate nurseries, via the registration process rather than using a license. It appears that this was just an oversight. It was never contemplated that, by making them a registration rather than a license, that this would be excluding them from the sales and use tax exemption. So HB 619 looks to correct this by explicitly stating that sales between a registered cannabis nursery and a licensed cannabis business also qualify for this exemption. Thank you. Once again, happy to answer any questions, and I urge a favorable report.
Okay, are there any questions? Okay, thank you. We do have someone signed up to testify. Warren Carr, please come forward. Yep.
Hello, thank you, Chair and Vice Chair and members of the committee. My name is Rusty Carr. I am a resident of Mount Airy in District 4. I'm a medical cannabis patient, a caregiver, and a home grower. I was not aware that the nursery license was done via registration, and we knew that was coming. All the other licenses were created through the legislature, and I object to having this nursery license created under registration. So I'm asking the committee to say no to this and ask the comptroller or the MCA to create the license through the legislature so that we can have public feedback on what they're doing. As background, just a little thing, even though you guys aren't involved in cannabis, there are things involved in the cannabis business now that are just nuts from a user perspective. As an adult, I'm allowed to grow 2 cannabis plants, but technically I'm not allowed to grow 2 hemp plants because I need a permit to do so. When you try to get to the difference between what a hemp plant is and a cannabis plant is, good luck. As best as I can tell from reading through the laws on the books for the hemp farming program, and the hemp pilot program, and the cannabis adult use legalization, there's circular references as to what's what. And at last check, the definition for vegetative state is that if the THC level has not been determined, then it's by default cannabis. It doesn't make any sense. This process of creating a nursery license doesn't make a lot of sense when you look at what's going on in the community. I ask the committee to report unfavorable to get these issues addressed. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Okay, are there
Thank
any
you.
questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 619. House Bill 633, that is my bill, and I will ask my 2 panelists to come forward. Organized here, thanks. Okay, good afternoon, committee. I am your chair, Vanessa Adavari, and I am here on House Bill 633, and I'm going to ask for your favorable report. I'll be brief. This is an easy bill. If you're a parent, a grandparent, auntie, anybody who takes your kids, your young adults, or you yourself go to like a Dave & Buster's or a Main Events, and all your kids want to do is play those games and go collect their tickets, then this is the bill for you. So, this legislation is attempting to clarify and codify existing regulations regarding skill-based amusement devices here in Maryland, such as the ones that I was just talking about. It's crucial to ensure that arcade-style gaming establishments, such as Dave & Buster's and other family entertainment centers, can continue to operate under a long-standing regulatory framework established by the Maryland Lottery and Gaming Control Agency. Since 2017, Maryland's regulations have appropriately distinguished skill-based amusement devices from illegal slot machines that allow these games to award low-value prizes, as I was just talking about, with players permitted to accumulate tickets and exchange them for larger prizes. This system has functioned effectively for years, fostering a thriving industry that employs over 600 Marylander residents and contributes about $5 million annually to our income. There is a proposed regulatory change which seeks to prohibit players from accumulating tickets for higher value prizes. I will just say, if you have ever gone to these places with any young child, that's all they do is want to collect these tickets so they can go in the little store and turn them in and get whatever prize that they could possibly get. House 633 provides essential clarity by reinforcing our existing regulatory framework. With that, I will turn it over to my panel and let them introduce themselves. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Vice Chair and members of the committee. Thank you, Chair Atterbury. My name is Tom Cole, and I'm here representing Dave & Buster's in support of House Bill 633. I'm also here for my son, Whitaker. He's 6 years old. His favorite place in the world is Main Event, which is one of Dave & Buster's stores. And as the chair described, it is these tickets. It is the accumulation of tickets. I don't know if any of you have been to an arcade recently, but now even the actual video games, you can accumulate these tickets. And it's a fundamental way of how these places work. It's been the longstanding practice in Maryland that these accumulation of tickets is allowed. It is the change in regulations, the repeal that HB 633 is looking to correct and intervene to make sure that these stores can continue to exist. As you'll hear in a moment from my client Angel Galarza from Dave & Buster's, Dave & Buster's operates over 158 stores in 43 states, Puerto Rico, and Canada. In none of those locations is there a regulation that prohibits them from the accumulation of tickets over the collective value, which under the agency is $30. So the proposed regulation that HB 633 would intervene to correct would make Maryland unique in that space. So I'm not going to repeat anything that Chair Atterbury articulated. That was a perfect capitulation of what we're trying to do here, but I would just ask a favorable report of 633 so that little kids like my son, like Chair Atterbury's children, can still collect these tickets and enjoy arcades the way they're done today. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Atterbury. Vice President Wilkins. So I'm Regional Operations Director for Dave & Buster's, currently oversee 8 locations, which includes 5 Dave & Buster's in Maryland and 1 Main Event. As a brand, we employ 600 team members and pay about $5 million in state taxes to Maryland. As Mr. Correct explained, the accumulation of prizes is part of our business model for Dave & Buster's. The ability for customers to accumulate tickets to win larger prizes in excess of the minimal value encourages our brand loyalty, increases the likelihood of frequent and repeated customer businesses, and adds to the Dave & Buster's overall revenue. In turn, this allows Dave & Buster's to expand its operations in Maryland, employ more Maryland residents in its 6 locations, and ultimately our next location here in Annapolis. The prizes that we're talking about that customers can redeem, 4 prizes, are nothing extravagant. The largest prize would range from an Xbox, a gaming console, and the continued current practice of awarding the prizes would be something that we would be in favor of. Thank you for the consideration of Bill H. 633. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and to this panel. I do see a couple of questions. Let's start with Delegate Patterson.
Are you guys being funny? You guys are all turning on your phones?
Delegate Ebersol.
No, I'm not being funny. I have a hard-hitting question. Here it comes. First of all, I want to thank the chair for bringing a gambling bill, which is a lesser, like largesse than some of the ones that you're going to see later on during this particular thing. I also don't like the reference that only children play these games there. Okay, I play them. Okay? I do skee ball all the time. And finally, I do have a real question. It says $30, but I'm reading off of the fiscal note, and there's something about $599. I just would like to understand what that refers to. I'll read you the sentence if it helps. With minimal wholesale value that does not exceed $599. What is that in regulations, and can you just explain to me what that is?
So it's our position that we don't think there should be a cap either way. We can live with $599. I don't know explicitly where that number came from, other than possibly implications for tax reporting.
What does it refer to, though? We're talking about $30 prizes. What is the $599? What
That
value
would
are we
be
talking?
the accumulated value past which you could not.
Okay, so if I win a whole bunch of $30 prizes, I got to stop.
Exactly. If you're at skee ball all day and you pass the $600 mark,
I'm not sure the little clicker's worth that much. I get it, but nonetheless, thank you.
Other real questions? Delegate Young.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. And Madam Chair, thank you for the bill. It's a really simple question. First off, I challenge Eric to skee ball any day. Secondly, I do want to know, at Dave & Buster's and Chuck E. Cheese, I actually haven't seen tickets. So just want to see if you would be open to making sure that the language is a little clearer on like cards and points, because it talks about objects in the language. So, all right.
Because you load them on cards, you're right.
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah. And, may I? And you load them on cards, kids bring those cards home. I live in Howard County, so we go to the main event, you take them back. I mean, the whole summer camp that my kids have gone to for multiple years, they're getting old now, they go to the main event. So they keep those cards and they take them back and they, reload them because they're trying to win the big prize.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Delegate Hornberger.
Great bill. Thank you for bringing this. I just have a question. So in Cecil County, I'm sure this happens in other counties, the county actually gives licenses to these types of machines, claw machines, pool tables, and the like. So in altering the definitions, will that have an impact on the counties and how they do their licensure of machines?
I do not know the answer to that question. Tom, do you know?
So this bill is targeted at skill-based amusement devices. I would not be able to speak to the individual device as to whether or not it would change the definition there, but this is specifically intended for arcade games, but we'll seek some clarification and get back to you.
I just out of curiosity, thanks.
Yeah.
Delegate Wu.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the bill. I have a real question. Because is that like joystick, you try to grab something from that box? Is that the device we're talking about here?
Yes.
So I have a question there. Because I tried it every time, never get one, right?
My son has.
I'm thinking about like how well, maybe like on a skill level, you're 100% right. Do you still have probability that you will never get it? Like when you play the slot machine, the highest probability 92%, right? Do you still apply a probability there? Is that in the outcome?
So I'd be interested to have my client address it. I'm sure that it depends on which claw machine you're using, but do you have an idea of the probability on those claw machines?
No, but it does have, there's a global settings to each one of the games. So yes, there is a probability to it. So for example, if 3 of us played, then it could be set to where 1 out of every 3 is where you're getting the prize. But there is a setting that each game has to be set to ensure that there are people winning those games. And if it's below that, then it has to be adjusted to ensure that people do win more often.
So it's not really totally skill-based, right?
Well, a claw game would not be skilled, but all other amusement games would be skilled.
I know this question is something new. Is there a way we can put that probability somewhere on the machine? Some people realize it's not totally skill-based.
We're going to take that back and talk to, because I don't know if we're prepared to explain that in detail, but we'll get back to your office on that item.
Thank you.
I mean, I think this is off subject, but I would.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, you're fine. No, I was just going to suggest that I think the claw game is skilled because you've still got to, aim and all that. Okay.
All right, seeing no other questions and having no other witnesses, that ends the bill hearing on House Bill 633.
Thank you.
As Madam Chair comes up, let's call House Bill 510, the Frederick County Delegation. It will be presented by Delegate Fair, sponsor only.
I am also no good at the claw game, just to be clear. It is definitely skill that we don't have. Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the esteemed Ways and Means Committee, I'm here on behalf of the Frederick County Delegation to present House Bill 510, which has to do with acceptance of credit cards for a very limited and express reason for specific institutions. So instead of reading a pre-made testimony, I just kind of want to share where this bill came from and why we're doing this. And why the delegation passed it. One of our council members, Councilmember Carter in the Frederick County Council, has brought forward this initiative on behalf of the Frederick County Council. They have voted in support of this effort. The delegation has backed up that support. Basically, we have, as most of you do in your districts, we have fire halls, and we have a Department of Fire and Rescue Services and a vast array of volunteer efforts that are done. And our volunteer firefighters really are on the front line every single day supporting our communities. They are looking for any avenues to help raise income and revenue for their efforts. And one of the best ways that they do this, if you have not been there and done it yourself, it is quite the experience, is to go do a bingo down at the local fire hall. It's a great time. It's a great experience for everybody. But one of the challenges that one of our specific fire halls in Walkersville has pointed out is the frustration that a lot of people have communicated that they cannot just use their credit card to purchase a bingo card. As you know, as this committee is well aware, credit cards are illegal in the state of Maryland for any gambling purposes whatsoever, whether that be through the Maryland State Lottery or through any of our gaming institutions. We cannot use our credit cards. After long discussions with the Attorney General's office as well as the Gaming Commission, we did receive a letter that if we wanted to look at a local authority bill, that we were within our legal rights to do so, that it would not run afoul of the state's ban on credit cards being used. And so we decided to move forward with this bill. It would simply allow those institutions that are in our Department of Fire and Rescue Services who are raising money through bingo halls to be able to use a credit card as a payment. And so I want to stress the difference between going to a casino and using a credit card to essentially run up a huge credit debt potentially against yourself in a casino versus purchasing an extra set of bingo cards in order to increase your chance of winning at a one-night, few-hour event. And so that is why we felt comfortable, the delegation felt confident with this bill, and we asked for a favorable report on House Bill 510. Thank you, and I look forward to any questions.
Okay, any questions? Okay, seeing none. Oh, you do have a question? Okay.
Almost got away.
Delegate Roberson?
Sorry, I was trying to find a button. I'm not used to talking. Just a question. So current law, though, I know you say we don't take credit cards. Can you do like these, like Cash App or something like that, or PayPal?
That's a great question. I don't have a good answer to that question. I can tell you that they can use their bank cards with their PIN that's associated to their bank account. What we learned through this process was that credit cards are processed through one processor and that any bank transactions are processed through a different processor. And so they're able to actually stop you from being able to use your credit cards because for that. So I'm not sure about Cash Apps. I don't know. Is the short answer. I don't believe so.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
That concludes the hearing on House Bill 510. Delegate Feldmark, House Bill 546.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, colleagues. For the record, I am Delegate Jessica Feldmark, here to present House Bill 546 and ask for your favorable report. This is very similar, strikingly similar, to a bill we heard last year. And I want to just remind everyone, in 2021, this body established the digital advertising gross revenues tax. It was a pretty controversial bill. It's still controversial. This bill before you today, however, is not. This is not a controversial bill. This is simply about process. And what we are doing is taking an additional clarifying step. When we established this tax, we did not at that time add it to the list of taxes for which the Comptroller's Office may hold an informal hearing on an application for revision of the assessment or a claim of a refund. So for most taxes that we have, the Comptroller's Office has this internal administrative process that someone can, challenge the assessment, or if they've paid it, claim a refund. So this bill simply brings the digital advertising gross revenues tax in line with our admissions and amusement tax, the alcoholic beverage tax, boxing and wrestling tax, income tax, motor carrier tax, motor fuel tax, public service company franchise tax, financial institution franchise tax, sales and use tax, or the tobacco tax. It's just a standard process that we allow for, and this would authorize the Comptroller's Office to hear those informal appeals. So I'm happy to answer any questions for you and ask for your favorable report.
Okay, are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 546.
Thank you.
Delegate Patterson, House Bill 618. And Ms. Beskind is here. Welcome, in case anyone has any questions.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, and colleagues. For the record, I'm Delegate Edith Patterson, and I'm here to sponsor House Bill 618, the State Lottery Internet Sales and Subscription Plans Authorization. Simply put, this legislation allows or authorizes the State Lottery and Gaming Control Agency to establish a system or programs that allow consumers to purchase a state lottery subscription plan through the internet using personal or mobile devices. In essence, this is a modernization bill for the current antiquated system of selling subscriptions. Why is this bill needed? Subscriptions are currently offered for Cash for Life, Multi-Match, Mega Millions, and Powerball through a mail-only program. This requires players to fill out the paperwork online, then print it out and mail a check or money order to lottery headquarters. The process to obtain a subscription and begin playing takes 1 to 2 weeks, depending on when the application is received and processed. I can't think, and you either can think of any successful modern business operating this way. This bill begins to address changes in consumer behavior. Consumers expect convenience, they expect flexibility, and they expect accessibility in their interactions with businesses and services, including our own government and agencies. And so when we think about what we can do, we should look at the current outdated and cumbersome process discourages participation, as well as particularly amongst the younger and tech-savvy audiences. The bill allows an online system which would enhance consumer satisfaction, improve operation efficiency for the state lottery, and potentially increase subscriptions rates, leading to the higher revenue for Maryland. This legislation will not impact lottery sales at physical locations, nor does it change the existing prohibition on lottery ticket sales through the internet. Maryland is not alone in recognizing the need for modernization. I want to also stress that you have in your packet or information some concerns, and I want to reiterate in summary that this legislation simply modifies how the lottery can accept payments for subscriptions. Currently, a player again takes the following steps: registering, filling out the form, printing it out, etc. House Bill 618 seeks to change only steps 3 and 4, only the printing and the mailing. All of the other parameters of the subscription program remain the same. Only jackpot games are offered for subscription purchase. The e-instant tickets mentioned as a concern by some parties are not available through the agency's subscription system. They're incorrect when that is offered. And so, colleagues, I'm seeking a favorable report for House Bill 618. And I have others here to answer questions that you may have.
Thank you. Questions, Delegate Hartman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The bill as it's written right now, so our local licensed lottery agents get paid commission for selling tickets, correct? So if we're selling subscriptions, if we expand that, then it's probably safe to assume that there's going to be less business going to those mom and pop grocery stores or convenience stores, wherever they were buying before, and would have a result of lessening their commission. And also, second part to the question, when they're winning, they get paid for redeeming, a store gets paid to redeem a ticket. So with a winning ticket here, is there anybody getting paid? And so what would that look like?
Yeah.
For the record, Julianne Piastra, thank you for the question. So I think to take a step back to look at the subscription as it is today, currently we have less than 6,000 subscriptions active for people who have printed out and mailed in that check. If your question is, can we include the retailers? As the bill is written, it does not have a retailer component. Can we include the retailers? The answer is yes. How that looks requires us to take a look at our system and the requirements and what the retailers are looking to do. We have had some feedback about, like, is there a voucher system that can be printed at retail that then people can redeem as the payment so that the retailer gets credit? That's certainly something that the agency can look at when they're designing the system requirements. Right now, we don't have the system in place to take online payment, but including a voucher is something that we would be able to look at, yes.
So then that, if somebody won through their subscription, so that, I guess by selling the subscription, the licensed agent is going to lose the 5 3/4% they get right now. And then for the winning ticket, they would lose the 2% for redemption. But what you're saying is, if somebody had the subscription and won, they could take that documentation to a retailer and get paid, and that way that retailer would get the 2% commission?
So the first part, yes, in terms of the selling, the retailer would get credit for the sale of the subscription through a voucher program.
Okay.
On the cashing side, the subscriptions work in a way where once your winnings get to $100, the state cuts you a check and mails it to your address associated with your subscription. I'm not sure how that process would change in this model with a retailer included. So I'd have to get back to you on the second part of that question.
Okay, I appreciate that. So right now, as it stands, our retailers would lose out with this legislation.
On the On the, how it's written, yes.
How it's written, yes.
With amendments, they can certainly be included.
And is the sponsor and lottery open to those amendments?
The lottery's certainly open to, we're here for information only, so.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I'll just to piggyback, and Delegate Patterson is the subcommittee chair. She has been working on amendments, so I want to thank you. She has been working with lottery on just that issue, on how we can include the retailers in the subscription process. Yep. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you. Thank you, Delegate Patterson.
Thank you.
That concludes the hearing on House Bill 618. Delegate Schmidt, welcome to Ways and Means. House Bill 461. And you have David Brunton here, and we're checking to see, yes, you have Lauren Ulig here virtually. So whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and the esteemed members of Ways and Means Committee. I am Delegate Schmidt from District 33B, serving Anne Arundel County. This bill that comes before you today is from a constituent need. A very simple bill. You can tell by the text. It's about 15 lines. It comes from the need of a constituent. We represent a very diverse district, Anne Arundel County, that services rural, suburban, and includes the Maryland Farm Bureau, also the Anne Arundel County Farm Bureau. The bill as it's written, the purpose is to provide a sales and use tax that does not apply for cut flowers from farmers. You can look at the fiscal note. It appears to be quite high. We just received that late yesterday. We're working on that number. It seems to be a little bit, we need to narrow the scope down a little bit. As we've talked about this week, it's been Maryland Agriculture Week. I know a lot of us are going to attend the Taste of Maryland Agriculture tonight. It is a vital, vital part of our economy. We've seen the presence with them here this week. They sit here behind me. I work very closely with local farmers in the district. I've also worked 9 years in the past for Purdue Farms and Mount Air Farms. As you can see from the testimony, the Maryland Farm Bureau and the Maryland retailers supports this bill. And like I said, we're going to work on the fiscal note here. I urge the committee for a favorable report on House Bill 461, and happy Valentine's Week to you all.
Thank you to the committee and the chair and the vice chair for including us in this hearing, and my particular thanks to Delegate Stuart Schmidt for sponsoring the legislation to clarify that cut flower farms in Maryland should be treated like other farms. My name is David Brunton, and my wife and I operate a flower farm about 7 miles from here in Millersville, where we grow and sell all kinds of beautiful flowers that people buy in bouquets. We are among the nearly 300 members of the Maryland Cut Flower Growers Association, and like 88% of U.S. farmers, our family also depends on non-farm income for our livelihood, so I have taken leave from my non-farm job to join you here today to speak only as a farmer and as a citizen, but not in any other capacity. Maryland is a perfect place for specialty farming operations like cut flowers. Cut flower farms do not require acres and acres of land, which would be difficult here, and they do depend on a ready supply of nearby customers who are plentiful here. Even the most urban districts in Maryland are home to flower farms. Flower farms went out of business in record numbers in the 90s and 2000s, but thankfully we are experiencing an incredible resurgence in Maryland. The number of flower farms here has more than doubled between 2017 and 2022. One impediment to further growth of Maryland flower farms is that cut flowers are treated differently than other crops. When we farmers sell our flowers to retail customers, we were required to charge, track, file, and remit sales tax, which is unlike any other farm crop in Maryland. And in fact, some crops we're growing and selling this season, such as basil, is subject to sales tax if the customer plans to use it as a cut flower, but not for other uses, like if they're going to take it home and make yummy pesto. The combined gross revenue of all Maryland flower farms is approximately $4 million. And the MCFGA members estimate that less than 1/4 of that revenue is retail sales. So we're talking about an amount here of less than $1 million of gross sales. The fiscal note attached to the bill, I think, put the cost of the bill at over $10 million, which would be wonderful. But I am supportive of an amendment to clarify that this would apply only to farmers and not to all flower sales. And I ask you to look favorably on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we have Ms. Ulig?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Unfortunately, I can't be in person today. I'm a little bit sick, so you guys probably don't want me to be there. in person. My name is Lauren Eulig. I'm an architect, a flower farmer, and the current president of the Maryland Cut Flower Growers Association, and I'm here speaking on their behalf. I'm not sure that I could say anything more clearly than David, a friend and fellow farmer, has said already, but I just wanted to express from the organization my support for this legislation, especially as it relates to cut flower sales to retail customers. Having to have our farmers sell crops at farmers markets adjacent to other farm stands that might have flowers and other types of produce that are not beholden to charging the sales tax creates a lot of friction for consumers for our farmers. And we're hoping that with this legislation, you would consider a spoon to farmers everywhere. We like David said, we believe that the way this the fiscal note attached to this bill is it includes all cut flower sales, which would include the sale of imported flowers from other countries, and that's why the fiscal note is so high attached to this bill. So we're looking to work with our sponsors to amend it to make sure we have the right amount attached to it, just considering the budget goings on in Maryland right now. Thanks.
Okay, are there any questions? Delegate Buckle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just wanted to clarify and hit that. I think this is another instance of our tax policy. It doesn't make sense. So you own a farm, you have basil, you sell it to someone directly. They come onto your farm. It's not you sell it to the supermarket. The supermarket still imposes whatever taxes associated on their end sale. When you sell it to a supermarket, a grocery store, that's a direct sale. But someone comes onto your farm, you've got a little retail operation set up on your farm that's legal, and you charge them the sales tax if they say, I'm going to use this for a flower display in my house, but you don't charge them the sales tax if they say, I'm going to cut this up and throw it into my spaghetti sauce or whatever it is that they're using it for. Is that my understanding?
As crazy as it sounds, that is a correct understanding.
Right.
And I would go further to say that technically, if you bought a corn stalk at that same farm stand and weren't going to use it as corn, but were going to use it as a decoration, it should also technically be subject to sales tax.
That's crazy.
But probably in practice.
Okay, and that's what we're really focusing on. You're getting this fiscal note. DLS doesn't have a lot of time sometimes to do these things. They just take a number of $37.5 billion is the global cut flower sales amount, and then they use some math and say they divvy it down to what it must be in Maryland. But what you're saying, what the bill is saying is, this isn't for, I want to stop by a store and buy some flowers for someone in my life and I don't pay the sales tax. This is for people who come onto your farms, your ag operations, and want to buy cut flowers there directly from you. That shouldn't be subject to sales tax because it's an ag product just like any other that we already give you the exemption.
Yes, sir, that is exactly our
And you
intent.
think that the amount would really be more like, if you say there's let's just say about $1 million worth of these types of sales, we'd really be talking about $60,000 and not $10 million.
That's correct. We think it's about 100 times lower than the fiscal note.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Let's just say you wanted to stop by his farm on your way here and buy some flowers for the chair. You would be able to do that without being
Well,
without being taxed.
we wait until Valentine's Day here on Ways and Means and then inundate her with flowers. So
Sounds
that's
good.
nice.
Sounds good, Delegate. Thank you.
You might want to do that too, if you
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Freddie.
That concludes the hearing on House Bill 461, House Bill 483, Delegate Ziegler, and you have Lindsay Thompson, Tyler Huff, and Matthew Capodanno.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much. For the record, I'm Delegate Natalie Ziegler here with House Bill 483. And first, I just want to thank you all so much for helping to pass this bill's predecessor, which established a $75 tax credit to help with the processing fee if you shoot a deer and donate it to a food bank. So the processing fee is more like $90 or $100, but this was a big help. And the program has been very successful. So I am back to ask you to consider raising the $300 cap that was part of last year's bill. So you could only get coverage for 4 deer that you donated to a food bank. I would like to lift the cap so that we rely so heavily on hunters who actually enjoy doing this. And as everybody knows, deer have become a huge problem for farmers, for gardeners, for our forests, for drivers. They really are overpopulated, particularly in some areas of our state. So I will leave the personal stories to my panel, but I ask for a favorable report on House Bill 483. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Tyler Huff. I am the Director of Government Relations for Maryland Farm Bureau. Here in support of the bill today, we thank the delegate for her work on this bill, especially last year to get the ball in motion or ball rolling, and looking forward to potentially moving this legislation as well. Deer damage is a major issue within our state, and farmers are the ones that take the brunt of that. Well, the last time that the USDA surveyed Maryland farmers regarding crop damage, it was determined that deer are responsible for roughly 77% of the crop damage in the entire state that we see. Based on discussions with farmers statewide, it's estimated that the deer damage costs a farmer roughly $50 per acre, or 20% of their cost within that particular acre. That is a lot of money we're talking about, especially for a group that is working on very, very thin margins. Considering that Maryland has roughly 1.2 million crop acres, deer could be causing as much as $60 million in damage yearly that our farmers are having to pocket and having to deal with. So any sort of incentive to continue hunters going out, to continue hunters taking deer within the legal bag limit, being the #1 supporter of that, and then donating them to programs like Farmers Feeding the Hungry, like the food bank, giving back and helping solve the hunger issue within the state. We think this is a bill that can better.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Lindsay Thompson, here today on behalf of the Maryland Grain Producers Association. Tyler went over many of the facts and figures, so I thought I would use this time to explain our personal story and experience with this. In addition to be a lobbyist, I actually farm with my husband in Queenstown, Maryland. When we took over our family's farm in 2020, we realized we had a deer problem, right? So much so that I actually took one of your colleagues from Baltimore County who had previously never voted in favor of any hunting legislation out to my farm and showed her that 20% loss and damage. And she's actually become a champion for helping abate the deer damage issue moving forward. So I'll give you our example for last year. Last year, utilizing deer depredation permits or crop damage permits, we harvested 25 deer off of our farm and donated every single one of those, resulting in about 1,200 pounds of venison donated to the Maryland Food Bank, which is about 5,000 meals total. As Delegate Ziegler said, the average cost of processing for a deer is about $90 if you just do the basic grounding of all of the deer. And so while we were able to take advantage of the tax credit for a portion of that, we obviously had quite a bit of cost out of pocket as well. We think that this is a great incentive and opportunity not only to help farmers deal with their crop damage issues, but also address the issue of hunger in Maryland by donating this high quality, high protein meat to the Marylanders who need it. And with that, we would ask for your favorable report. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Matthew Capodanno. I am the Government Relations Manager over the Maryland Food Bank. The Maryland Food Bank would not be able to feed the 1 in 3 Marylanders who are at risk of food insecurity without a strong local food system. And the foundation of that food system is the farms and farmers located throughout the state. Through our Farm to Food Bank program, we contract, grow with, glean from, and accept donations from local farms whose products go directly into food insecure communities throughout our network of nearly 800 partner organizations and 1,200 distribution sites. The Maryland Food Bank also understands that damage to farms is damage to the food system. Just last year, we heard from a farmer on the Eastern Shore who lost over $200,000 to deer alone in the previous growing season. And as Tyler mentioned, the Maryland Farm Bureau estimates that deer damage across the state could be as high as $60 million annually. This bill can build on the existing venison donation program to incentivize hunters to decrease the damage caused by deer to Maryland farmers and simultaneously increase venison donations to the food bank that will be used to help feed families statewide. The Maryland Food Bank appreciates your consideration and respectfully requests a favorable report on House Bill 483.
Okay, are there any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
That concludes the hearing on House Bill 483. House Bill 496, Delegate Lewis.
Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the Ways and Means Committee. I'm Robin Lewis, Delegate Robin Lewis, here on behalf of House Bill 496. Now, this is actually a health care workforce bill, and you're probably wondering, what in the world is a health care workforce bill doing in the committee that raises revenue and makes spending decisions? Well, it's because one of the biggest obstacles to increasing our pipeline of healthcare workers, specifically nurses, is a tax credit eligibility criteria that's hard to meet. So this bill, House Bill 496, reduces one of the supply side barriers to the nursing training pipeline. It works by reducing the number of clinical hours that a preceptor must offer to qualify for the tax credit. So so this is not HGO. Let me slow down a little bit, because we nerd out up there. We have a well-documented shortage of nurses in the state of Maryland. I'm sure you guys have all heard about it. The shortage of nurses has a direct impact on healthcare outcomes, on the survival and well-being of our people. We need more nurses, and we need to train more, we need to retain them, and one of the ways to do that is look at the process for training them. There's a stage in nursing training called the preceptor clinical training period. A preceptor is a trained, licensed, experienced nurse practitioner who's qualified to train nurses in training, to train nursing students. So that's pretty simple. You don't need to be an HGO to get that. If you want more nursing preceptors, though, you've got to incentivize them. You're asking a nurse who's practicing, a nurse practitioner, an experienced, high-level person, very busy, lots of demands on her time or his or her time. You're asking them to take time out of their daily work to serve as preceptors for the next generation of trainees. One of the things we've done in the state of Maryland is to incentivize those experienced nurses to become preceptors is to give them a tax credit. We say, if you give your valuable time and experience to train the next generation of nurses, we'll give you a tax credit. We'll reduce your tax burden as an incentive. And that's a great idea. We do it for other professions as well. The problem with the nurse preceptor tax credit is it's kind of onerous. It asks those experienced nurse professionals to spend more time to qualify, to give more of their time to qualify for the tax credit. So this bill proposes to reduce the number of clinical training hours they must offer to qualify for the tax credit. Reducing that demand, that barrier, makes it more attractive for experienced nursing professionals to become preceptors, to participate in the process of training the next generation, and thereby unlock some of the pressure on our nursing workforce pipeline. Specifically, this bill will reduce the number of mandatory training hours from 100 hours to 90 hours per clinical rotation. It's a technical fix, but we believe it will make a huge difference. Think about the fact that within the next 10 years, we're facing a shortage of nurses, that is nurse practitioners, LPNs, and RNs of about 10,000, and we can't afford it. Our economy and our health system and our people can't afford a shortage like that. I'd like to flag for you that this idea, this highly technical but important idea, came from a constituent, and you guys all know how sometimes our best policy solutions come from our folks back home. And I'll just flag for you that the constituent who thought of this great idea is in the room with us. She wasn't able to sign up to testify, but her name is Teresa DeCita. She's sitting behind me to my left. She's a nursing professional herself and working to enhance her training by pursuing a PhD. And she's noticed in her field that the lack of nursing preceptors is a blockage. And she thought of this great idea to help loosen that blockage and get more nurses trained. Teresa worked really hard over a few months developing this idea, worked closely with me, and she sought support and input from a broad range of stakeholders, and that's how this bill came together before you. Now, you may have noticed that just a few minutes before this bill hearing began, the fiscal note was published. And if you've done that, and being Ways and Means, you probably have done that, you've looked, you'll notice that we have a $100,000 fiscal note attached to this bill. $100,000 in fiscal 26, and then a $200,000 in the out years. That wasn't really anticipated, and I realize there's a limitation. We have to be cognizant of the constraints before us. But I would argue this, as you make your deliberations, the cost of the nursing shortage can be measured in dollars. We know that there are people forego care, they postpone treatment because there aren't necessarily enough providers. We also know that the nursing shortage diminishes the number of earning and tax-paying people in our state. And I would argue that the $100,000 fiscal note would be more than offset by the fiscal and health care benefits that would accrue to the state if we invest in this simple way. The part of the funding for the nursing preceptor tax credit would come from a fee increase in the certificate renewal for advanced practice nurses. A $15 increase in that fee would help to offset some of the cost, but it's a small way of addressing that fiscal impact, which we just learned about. I'll end my testimony simply by reminding you that we're in an all-hands-on-deck healthcare provider shortage. And if we can find a way, through your wisdom and expertise, to tweak our tax policies to improve the pipeline of nursing professionals, I think it's worth doing. And with that, I'd ask for your favorable report.
Thank you. And there were a couple other people signed up to testify in support. Dr. Rachel Jordan, Catherine Ling, and I don't see Bill Kress. Is he here? We'll go ahead for 2 minutes each, please, and then we'll see if there's any questions.
I'll step back, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members. My name is Dr. Rachel Jordan, and I'm here today on behalf of the Board of Nursing, where I serve as the Secretary and appointed advanced practice member. I'm also a board-certified family nurse practitioner, and I provide care to patients under Hospice of the Chesapeake. The board is in full support of House Bill 496, as we believe this bill will extend the preceptor program tax credit and reduce the number of hours required to qualify. Now, I can tell you firsthand as a preceptor, every hour we spend precepting our future nurses is a labor of love and dedication to the community and our profession. Preceptorship is an important step in the education of our nurses, allowing them to get the hands-on experience that they wouldn't necessarily be able to receive in a classroom, and this is done under the supervision of mentors that are currently working in the field. As the credit is for unpaid preceptors, and most preceptors are not paid for their services, this will benefit individuals who are offering their experience and their time out of a sense of duty to the profession and community to ensure that those entering the profession of nursing behind them understand what is required of them to be an excellent nurse, and also improving the care of patients. So this tax credit both encourages people to enter into the preceptor program, but also rewards those who are currently serving. So we look forward to a favorable report, and we thank you for the opportunity to testify today.
Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the committee, and Delegate Lewis. My name is Catherine Ling. I'm here on behalf of the Maryland Nurses Association Legislative Committee. I am the deputy chair. I've also been in nursing education for over 15 years, and I'm a family nurse practitioner. I'm board certified. We're asking for a favorable report on House Bill 496, income tax credits for nursing program preceptors in areas with healthcare workforce shortages. Nursing is the largest number of healthcare providers. However, our training is dependent heavily on volunteerism to provide clinical practicum opportunities necessary to complete educational requirements. Currently, to graduate from an accredited program and to sit for advanced practice certification, a nurse practitioner graduate needs to have accumulated a minimum of 500 to 750 hours providing supervised direct patient care. The national average for pre-licensure students that they need to accumulate is 600 hours. These experiences are often taking place in multiple practices or institutions over the course of 2 to 3 years. Lowering the tax credit threshold to 90 hours will align those requirements to meet partial clinical placements, which is often seen as more achievable in a busy practice setting. Here's an example to give you an idea of why lowering the hour requirement makes sense. You are in a busy primary care office and can only afford to precept a student 1 day a week. That student is on a semester schedule, which means when orientation, breaks, final exams are figured in, they will be in your clinical setting for about 10 weeks. If you work a 9-hour day, that's 90 hours. If the threshold is 100 hours, you then need to add days or times, increasing the burden on you, the preceptor. The American Association of Colleges of Nurses recognizes the lack of preceptors as a contributing factor to the nursing workforce shortage, and I certainly want to retire sometime within the next 2 decades. So we urge your favorable report in looking at this bill.
Thank you. I just want to mention we have from the Health and Government Operations Committee with us, Delegates Hutchins and Warman, who are listening to this as well. So welcome them to HGO. Welcome them to Ways and Means. Yeah. Are there any questions for the bill sponsor or for these two lovely individuals? Okay, seeing none, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
That concludes the hearing on House Bill 496. House Bill 590 is skipping that, and we're going last. House Bill 465, Delegate Plakovich-Carr. And whoever you would like to bring up.
Good afternoon, colleagues. For the record, I'm Delegate Julie Plakovich-Carr, here to present House Bill 465. This bill aims to prevent problem gambling behaviors, especially related to mobile sports betting, and it will make it easier for players in all types of legalized gaming to access treatment resources. Now that we are 2 years into the legalization of mobile sports betting in Maryland, I think it's time for us to take a look back at the protections that we've put in place to see if they are sufficient. While most players view sports betting as entertainment that they can responsibly enjoy, this isn't true for everyone. And the warning signs are flashing that certain demographics, namely young men age 18 to 24, are at greater risk of problem gambling with mobile sports betting. The prevalence studies done here in Maryland show increased rates of problem gambling with sports betting as compared to other legalized gaming in our state. And just as troubling is that underage youth are illegally gambling. A nationwide survey found that 58% of 18 to 22-year-olds have bet on sports, even though in most states you have to be 21 to bet on sports. So to be clear, I voted for mobile sports betting back in 2021, and I am appreciative of the money that it raises for the state, but as policymakers, our job is to ensure that the system has sufficient consumer protections in place. Much of the bill before you is focused on mobile sports betting, given that it is an emerging industry in our state, but there are some other player protections included for other types of gaming, and I'll point those out when I get to those. So what does the bill do? First of all, the use of credit cards would be prohibited in mobile sports betting to ensure that a player can't go into debt because of their gambling. Maryland doesn't allow credit cards for any other type of licensed gaming, and this bill would close that loophole for mobile sports betting. 10 other states have already done this, including our neighbors in Virginia. Mobile sports bettors would be required to set their own deposit limit for their play to help them play responsibly. The bill would prohibit a mobile sports betting license holder from emailing marketing to players who have temporarily suspended their account. The bill would also codify lottery's directive from last year banning player-specific prop betting in college sports. Prop bets or proposition bets are a wager on anything besides like the game's final outcome, such like as the number of assists by a particular player. And 16 other states have joined in with Maryland in already prohibiting this. Moving into the provisions that are not specific to mobile sports betting, the bill would raise the minimum age to participate in regulated fantasy competitions from 18 to 21, and this would conform with the age requirements for sports betting and casino gambling in our state, and 5 other states have already taken this action. The bill would also make it easier for people who have self-identified as having a gambling problem to get treatment. Under the bill, someone who applies for the voluntary exclusion program would be automatically referred for free counseling and support services unless the person opts out on their VEP application form. And this was a recommendation that came from the Department of Legislative Services in the 2023 audit they did, a performance evaluation that they did, and it was a recommendation that was supported by the Department of Health and the Maryland Center of Excellence on Problem Gambling. And lastly, the bill would expand Maryland's researchers' access to gaming data to help them conduct prevalence studies. Other parts of the bill would be codifying existing protections that the lottery has already set via regulation. So collectively, these safeguards will make gaming safer for players while allowing this industry to continue to operate and generate revenues for our state. And lastly, I will flag that I do have an amendment that's going to be forthcoming based off the constructive conversations I've had with lottery as well as with some of the sports betting license holders. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Atterbury and members of the committee. I am Mary Drexler, Director of the Maryland Center of Excellence on Problem Gambling, here today to testify in support of House Bill 465. There is provision in this bill that would require the State Lottery and Gaming Control Agency to share with the center the contact information of a person who requests to be placed on the voluntary exclusion list. This would allow us at the center to help the person in whatever way they need. The center's peers are currently actively working with 580 help seekers, and since the inception of our program, the center has helped close to 2,000 Maryland residents. We have a few types of assistance we can offer, and it's completely up to the help seeker and how they want to work. We have 6 peer recovery sports specialists who are living in recovery from gambling disorder and are available basically 24/7 to people who need to talk to someone. We also have a network of treatment providers, and we deliver technical assistance and weekly trainings to make sure these providers are available and able to offer specific problem gambling treatment. In addition, we maintain a list of problem gambling counselors to address the issue of problem gambling. We know we aren't reaching everybody. We could solely through the 1-800-GAMBLER. Right now, the lottery is not required to send people to the center, but there are the people who know they have enough of a problem to join the voluntary exclusion list. But they aren't taking advantage of everything the state can offer. Requiring the lottery to share these individuals' information with us means that one of the center's peers who are legally bound to protect their privacy can offer additional support so the person doesn't need to feel so alone, and more importantly, increases their chances of success. I urge a favorable report on HB 465. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Isabel Thornton, and I am a student in the Public Health Law Clinic at the University of Maryland School of Law, and I'm here today to testify in favor of House Bill 465. This bill in part seeks to prohibit player-specific prop bets on college students. There's a growing concern that these kinds of bets shift the focus from the team to an individual, resulting in an increase in player harassment. In 2024, the NCAA president noted that 10 to 15% of Division I athletes reported being harassed. Specifically, these athletes reported either experiencing death threats or demands for money from unhappy bettors. And between 2023 and 2024, the NCAA conducted a study specifically where they looked at online abuse that these athletes face. In this study, it was noted that 12% of all of these abusive messages being sent had some sort of content that related to sports betting in some form. And then within that 12%, most of this came from the March Madness men's and women's basketball teams. And it's also notable that specifically the female athletes who participated in March Madness received 3 times the amount of abuse as the men. This kind of harassment can result in athletes struggling with their mental health. They can experience anxiety, depression, loss of confidence, panic attacks, and it can ultimately result in athletes having suicidal tendencies and actions. As of now, 17 states prohibit prop bets on college students, and Maryland is one of those states. In 2024, guidance was passed. And while this is an important step in protecting athletes, it is guidance that can be rescinded. And putting this policy guidance into law will provide permanent enforceable protection for student athletes. And for these reasons, I respectfully urge a favorable report on House Bill 465, excuse me. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Barbara Zekchik. I'm here today representing the Maryland Coalition of Families. We're here in avid support of the bill. We double down on everything that the Center for Excellence has said. The Maryland Coalition of Families is a statewide peer support group. It provides family peer support to the caregivers of those with certain needs that include problem gambling. We are seeing a rise in suicide attempts by youth who are getting into trouble with problem gambling, and so we greatly appreciate the protections that are put forth in this bill, and we ask for a favorable report. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. Good afternoon, Chairperson Atterbury, members of the committee. My name is Will Heyman. I'm the peer supervisor at the Maryland Center of Excellence on Problem Gambling, also a person in long-term recovery from a gambling disorder who started sports gambling in the early 90s as a college student at the University of Maryland. Today, I assist individuals whose lives have been negatively impacted by the legalization of sports gambling. It took 20-plus years for my gambling to progress to the point where I was suicidal, and I was fortunate enough to get help, whereas now we are receiving calls from teens, young adults, and their parents desperately reaching out for assistance. It's not just the financial damage that should be taken into consideration, but also the preoccupation and the fact that gambling addiction can change the entire trajectory of our lives. After graduating from college, the preoccupation stole my ambition and many years that could have been spent focused on living my best life. I wish I had seen the damage that lifestyle was causing me earlier, because it may have saved me from 2 failed marriages and a lot of regrets in my 20s and 30s. I am, however, grateful today that I'm able to share my lived experience with others so that they can make informed, responsible choices in regards to gambling, and hopefully assist you in making informed, responsible decisions regarding these types of bills so we aren't setting our youth up for failure. Prop plays allow gamblers to wager emotionally and recklessly throughout the game, rather than having to wait until the game is over to find out the results on much fewer wagers. It also opens up the games to a lot more opportunities for corruption. The only day of the year I can recall being able to bet on prop plays was on the Super Bowl, where I would have 30 to 50 prop plays throughout the game. But the difference is, back then you had to put your bets in before the game started and wait until the game was over to find out if you won or lost. Allowing the opportunities to place wagers throughout the game only leads to more opportunities to make emotional, reckless wagers. I encourage a favorable report on House Bill 465. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any questions? House Bill 484, Delegate Eversole. and whoever you would like to bring up with you first. Okie dokie.
Are we all talking? We're all talking. Okay. Absolutely. Take a seat right. Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair. I'm Eric Ebersol. I bring before you House Bill 484, a bill that seeks to draw a better definition of the idea of fantasy sports and perhaps move it into a new era. The bill addresses the current ambiguity in law by explicitly defining fantasy competitions to include formats where participants are either compete against each other or against a statistical measurement established by the fantasy competition operator. This update ensures that modern skill-based formats of fantasy competitions are properly recognized in the Maryland law. It also reaffirms that such competitions, when conducted in compliance with statutory requirements, are distinct from gambling, wagering, or sports betting. In addition, the bill establishes vital consumer protections by requiring the State Lottery and Gaming Control Commission to create a voluntary exclusion list for individuals who wish to self-exclude from participating in fantasy competitions and fantasy competition operators to develop programs to mitigate compulsive play. I commend she's not sitting there, but I commend my other delegate for addressing this head on as well, and we'd like to put it in the bill to make sure that it is addressed. The legislation strikes a necessary balance between fostering innovation in the fantasy competition industry and protecting consumers. It brings clarity to operators, supports responsible gaming initiatives, and aligns Maryland's regulatory framework with evolving industry standards. And by taking a look at these updates and adopting them, Maryland can ensure that fantasy competitions are conducted fairly, responsibly, transparently, while distinguishing them for chance-based gambling activities. So 484 is a step toward modernizing our approach to fantasy. Real quickly, fantasy sports was something that came along before sports wagering. We established it as games of skill and not chance. And early on, we didn't lump them in with sports wagering. When sports wagering came, there's a distinction. This bill seeks to establish a sort of area in between the two. It has been suggested that if this bill were to gain some teeth, that we would add in a fee for this type of sports wagering or not sports wagering, fantasy wagering, wherever it falls in that continuum. And I think that the folks up here with me are agreeable to that concept. With that, I'm not going to try to go into too much detail. Maybe some of the questions will ask me to do so, and I thank you for time to say about this. It's because it was written down. Sometimes I actually go off the written stuff.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Matthew Pica. I'm here representing Prize Picks and to answer any questions you may have regarding the impact on Maryland this bill will have if enacted. Joining me today are Shane Salm, Director of Government and Regulatory Affairs for Prize Picks, Adam Packer, Senior Vice President for Prize Picks, who is here virtually, and John Pica, who's the lobbyist for Prize Picks. We appreciate your time and consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Shane Salm. I am the Director of Government Affairs for Prize Picks. I'm testifying in support of HB 484. Prize Picks is the largest privately held daily fantasy sports operator in the country. While Prize Picks currently operates in over 40 states and D.C., Maryland's regulatory interpretation prevents us from offering our fantasy contests to the tens of thousands of Maryland citizens who currently leave the state to play Prize Picks in neighboring jurisdictions, and by doing so, they send millions in potential tax revenue out of the state. HB 44 could clarify ambiguity in the statute by 1, clarifying that DFS is distinct from sports betting, 2, supporting consumer choice by allowing single-player DFS, which is one of the most popular innovations in fantasy sports, and 3, expanding consumer protections, including self-exclusion programs and responsible gaming measures, areas where Prize Picks leads the industry. Recent proposed agency rules demonstrate that there is a blurring of the lines by some as to the difference between DFS and sports betting. However, these are separate and adjacent markets. In fact, this week, a recent study from UNLV was concluded that DFS and sports betting participants may be regarded as two independent consumer segments, and that furthermore, DFS participants are motivated more so by the entertainment and social interaction of DFS compared to sports betting participants. We mentioned this only that it reinforces what PrizePicks has built, which is a sports entertainment platform that drives on intellect and social engagement through social media. Yet restrictive regulatory interpretations attempt to force innovators like PrizePicks into the same mold as sports betting operators, assuming we are some form of sports betting or even iGaming. In reality, we are innovating to create an experience designed for a smart consumer who doesn't want to be pushed into online sports betting. Fantasy sports are rooted in 100 years of law around games of skill, and they have evolved significantly. By updating Maryland's code to reflect current industry practices, this bill promotes fair market competition, prevents regulatory overreach, and generates new state revenue. For these reasons, I respectfully urge the committee to issue a favorable report on HB 44, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. Thank you.
Hello, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair. I'm Bartlett Clellan. I'm General Counsel with NetChoice. NetChoice is a trade association of leading e-commerce and online companies promoting the value, convenience, and choice of internet business models. Our mission is to make the internet safe for free enterprise and for free expression. I'm going to try not to repeat any of the points made, so if you'll think of these comments as continuation. But I do want to thank the chair and the committee for allowing us, NetChoice, to be here today to provide our point of view on fantasy competitions and addressing the current ambiguity in Maryland law, as you heard the representative speak to. As with all growing industries, innovation is vital to the continued success of the gaming industry. To protect this innovation and this form of entertainment, we believe the appropriate regulations and guidelines should apply, and that is exactly what you find in House Bill 484. As important as it is for Maryland to allow for innovation to flourish and for Marylanders to enjoy their chosen entertainment, consumer protections in this space are also warranted, and that is exactly what HB 484 provides. We respectfully, NetChoice, urges the committee to support this important legislation, and we thank you again for the opportunity to share our perspective on this critical issue. And I would be remiss if I didn't compliment the chair for the fantastic staff who helped me get registered here. They were so friendly and so polite. I would be a fool not to mention it. And finally, because I apparently love paper more than trees, I have a copy of testimony for everybody if you'd like a copy of the testimony in a hard copy. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Move the mic over toward yourself. There we go. Got three. Oh.
We don't have whoever was supposed to be here virtually. Okay.
Adam here.
John, are you going?
I can.
Okay. Yeah, there's nobody here virtually.
Okay. Madam Chair and members of the committee, thank you. John Pica on behalf of PrizePicks, the largest fantasy competition operator in the country. I'd like to thank Delegate Ebersole for putting the bill in. His explanation was on target. In 2021, when you passed the statute, when you passed the law, you created two licenses, sports wagering and fantasy competition. We believe the Lottery and Gaming Control Agency has conflated language between the two and has mistakenly interpreted the law. PrizePicks would qualify and would be able to operate in Maryland if you look at the criteria that this legislature passed. Unfortunately, for some reason, the agency added a fifth criterion, and it prohibits the fantasy competition operator from competing against a player from competing against the operator. We think that's an issue that should have been decided by the legislature. It's not technical language. It's not stylistic. It's a substantive language that favors one licensee to the detriment of the other, being the fantasy competition operator. Look at Virginia, which has an identical statute to Maryland. The game that the agency believes is objectionable in Maryland is being operated in Virginia without any issue. So in conclusion, we believe this will raise additional revenue for the state, and we look forward to working with the committee and the subcommittee on language that would move this bill forward. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, we do have some questions, just letting the committee know there are 2 other folks signed up to testify in favor and 1 unfavorable. So questions, we'll start with Delegate Griffith.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for bringing this bill forward. So I'm trying to understand the prize picks model. So I play fantasy football for like 25 years. I play daily fantasy, DraftKings, these games where you're picking like quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, defense kicker, and all that. What is your game that you're advocating for? How does it compare to fantasy and daily fantasy?
So I put the bill in, so I love this idea. So I've studied a little, but I've told them if I mess up, they can put a Band-Aid over what I say. So fantasy competitions are between players, and you pick players and get data. What they have here is more or less where you get a number for a player for a certain number of yards or a certain number of points that they score in a game, and then other players do the same thing. And they can, in this case, it's a little different because you could all choose the same players and put in the same ones, but basically you accumulate points toward a victory over other players in the game, and you pay to enter, and you get a prize if you win.
So how is that different from? It seems very similar to DraftKings, daily fantasy on DraftKings, or some of the other platforms.
Right. Most of the beer and chips fantasy leagues are established by someone who's a commissioner. That's not a company, and so you get it through them, but you don't. But they're not monitored by the places you do it.
That's like a traditional fantasy football league, but daily fantasy, like a DraftKings or some of these other platforms, it is like that where you draft a team. And on that day, you accumulate points, and you're in a pool with 1,000 other players. And once you reach a certain percentile, right, you'll have a payout.
So I think the folks from Prize Picks would say there's not a lot of difference.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Delegate Buckle.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
How does, I read in the fiscal note that we basically tax or generate revenue from this activity the same way we do as a sports, pure sports wagering, the 15%. But how in particular, if we allow or expressly allow this particular type of a game to continue, do you think that has a positive net revenue effect? Is this a growing segment of the population or a growing segment of players? And where does that lead us in terms of our revenue expectation from it? Because that was pretty silent.
We're going to become wildly rich. I want to say that.
I mean, only if you win, Delegate Ebersol, but I'm just wondering in general.
Not only the person playing, I mean the state is going to benefit for sure. So.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Delegate. I think
give a real answer.
Is that a term of art, wildly rich? Can I write that in?
Yeah, as we mentioned, the UNLV study that came out this week, I thought did a good job of capturing that these are actually 2 distinct consumer groups. And so there would be, in addition to, as opposed to polling from one or the other, those that do DFS are more interested in the social and the entertainment aspect. And so we do believe that they would be, in addition, not pulling away from those that are already here doing sports wagering. And in fact, we already have active customers that are living in Maryland. They just go to DC and they play.
So this is expressly permitted. It's happening in DC, and they're generating the revenue from it.
Correct.
Thank you.
Delegate, it's happening in 40 other states.
Okay.
Delegate Young.
I'm just trying to get a sense of the formatting. There's like peer-to-peer, there's single player, there's player-to-player. Where does this fall in? Can you explain the difference?
Yeah, this bill would allow single player as opposed to what you said, peer-to-peer would be you and I playing against each other. Some refer to single player as you against the house. And then there's season long. This is not that. This is daily fantasy sports.
So it would be like, it's fantasy in a group, but I'm the only one in the, I don't know necessarily everybody else in the group. Is that correct?
If you're our peer-to-peer product, that's how it is. But you can just be you versus Prize Picks and just be only you.
So you can compete against Prize Picks in a standard with the standard that they set.
Okay.
Against the provider.
May I, Mr. Chairman? Madam Chair, I don't want to be, I don't want to misrepresent myself. So I said it's done in 40 other states. In about 20 states, 20 states allow player to player. Another 20 states allow player against the house, player against the operator.
Okay.
So it's roughly half and half, but they operate over 40 states.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any further questions? Okay, that's it for this panel. Is Robert Melvin here?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah. Robert Melvin, Brianne Dura Shewol. And just checking one more time to make sure Adam Packer is not with us virtually. Okay. Okay, whenever you're ready for 2 minutes.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Robert Melvin with the R Street Institute. We're a public policy research organization that promotes free markets and limited effective government. We support this measure because it clarifies state law defining online sports competitions like daily fantasy sports as being distinct from sports gambling. It also excludes fantasy sports from the definition of a sporting event in the context of sports betting regs, and creates a voluntary exclusion program to promote responsible gaming. Fantasy sports have been around since 1871 when Woodrow Wilson first conceptualized them, but it really gained traction in the 1960s with the first league that was adopted and created out in Oakland, serving as the foundation for today's industry. Originally for diehard fans with the time to track players and games over a season, fantasy sports have evolved with digital technology and DFS to reduce barriers to participation and allowed for more flexible short-term contests for cash prizes. Despite some misconceptions, this is not gambling. The 2006 Federal Unlawful Internet Gambling Enforcement Act classified them as games of skill, not chance, and research from MIT supports this position, since fantasy sports rewards skill. House Bill 484 would allow single-player DFS where individuals compete against statistical benchmarks, thereby expanding consumer choice and enhancing the market. It also promotes consumer protection through responsible gaming information and resources to prevent compulsive behaviors. We believe that this also helps democratize single-player DFS and ensures appropriate regulation carefully balances consumer choice through safety and responsible gaming measures. For these reasons, we strongly urge a favorable report.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Brianne Dora Shewol, and I'm a national problem gambling policy expert and advocate, and my remarks will be a bit different than those that you've heard preceding me. While fantasy sports play emphasizes an element of skill, I'd like to reinforce that it is still possible to experience problematic play and become addicted to these products. In fact, the National Council on Problem Gambling estimates that there are 9 million Americans that are struggling with problem gambling at this time, bringing with it an annual social cost of $14 billion. These two numbers are inclusive of individuals who are struggling from problematic play from fantasy sports. A large-scale survey that studied the behaviors and attitudes of fantasy players and sports bettors found that young male adults continue to be at the greatest risk for developing a gambling problem. And in fact, a quarter of those reported frequently experiencing at least one problematic play behavior. As noted in the earlier bill discussion, fantasy play is authorized here in the state at 18+. Fantasy players, which are notably younger and more susceptible to experiencing harm, deserve the same type of consumer protections that are afforded within the state during other gaming activities. Most notably, I'd like to applaud that this bill would build a much-needed central self-exclusion program for fantasy sports players in the state. Self-exclusion is one of the most widely accepted tools that can be utilized by individuals who'd like to be prohibited from playing because they feel that their play is causing them harm. As currently outlined in Maryland, the individual would have to exclude themselves from each individual platform, one at a time. This can both be triggering and burdensome. And in a time of distress and crisis, a player should have resources easily afforded to them. I applaud this bill for creating a central exclusion list, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you both very much. Unfavorable, Mr. Butler?
Good afternoon, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Wilkins, members of the committee. James Butler, Assistant Deputy Director, Chief of Staff on behalf of the Maryland Lottery and Gaming Agency. I'd like to take us on a historical look at the fantasy competition law in Maryland. This law was first created in 2012 to address fantasy competitions like those Xbox competitions. Marylanders were excluded from that. That's why it was originally enacted. In 2018, it was amended to address fantasy competitions, and that's what we have today. Maryland then in 2020, when the voters approved the referendum, that's when we had sports wagering. So you have to look at the evolution of each, from fantasy competition, sports wagering, and the original purpose of the fantasy competition law. Fantasy competitions are contests between individuals in which they pay an entry fee to participate in these imaginary teams. So in this bill, what they don't say is these are sports wagering things, head-to-head types of bets, over and under bets. That is not allowed in the fantasy competition law. That's allowed in sports wagering. Again, separating the two. Between 2020 and 2022, the agency sent out cease and desist letters to operators, fantasy competition operators, who were violating our regulations. They went above and beyond our regulations and started drifting over into the sports wagering law. So what this bill proposes to do is to undo the regulations that we have set for the operators. We currently have 13 fantasy competition operators. If you have games that you can participate in, you can do it. Maryland is now alone in prohibiting other sports wagering competitions. If I can finalize, increasing the registration fee, whether it's $10,000 or $100,000, does not solve this problem. As we say in the agency, there's no good thing that can be accomplished in creating this gray area. You don't want to have a gray area between sports wagering and fantasy competition. Here, this bill proposes to raise the minimum age from 18 to 21. Think about the unintended consequences when 18-year-olds are starting to go to these illegal fantasy competition sites. We don't want that. It was specifically by the legislature setting the parameters at 18 for fantasy, 21 for sports wagering. And lastly, I would say, again, creating this gray area will only cause confusion among the players, the operators, and the regulators. And for this, we urge an unfavorable report on House Bill 484. Thank you.
Are there any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That concludes the hearing on House Bill 484. Committee members, the clerk's office is here. If you have any bluebacks that you need to hand to them, because today is the deadline, you can get up and go do so. They're here. You're looking confused. Okay, Delegate Ebersol, House Bill 539. And you have former Ways and Means member and former Majority Leader.
Thank you.
Am I leaving anything else out?
I was parliamentarian. I thought he was.
And former parliamentarian of the House of Delegates, Bill Friend.
Thank you. We have a former parliamentarian in the room, another one as well. There we go.
You're never a former parliamentarian.
Well, okay, so here we go, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Eric Ebersol, and another in a long line of fun names for gambling. We have, what do we have? Prize Picks last time, and now we have Jackpocket. Okay, so here we go.
And jackpot.com.
Yeah, from jackpot.com. So we're in the 21st century, and we're post-COVID, and we've learned to order a lot of things online. We can get on our phones and order food, and we can get all sorts of things delivered to us, and some of them we can get electronically. And so, moving forward with the lottery, we'd like to allow people to buy lottery tickets, if they could, on their phone. Now you're thinking, whoa, I know what that is. That's just iLottery. No, in fact, it's not. The Jackpocket Company will actually take orders for tickets, and they will go and buy them at a designated lottery agent. That designated lottery agent will receive whatever fee they normally receive for the purchase of a ticket from the lottery. Also, prize caches, the same sort of thing happens in this particular case. A lot of it's done electronically. They'll buy the tickets. They'll send the person who asked for the ticket a picture, a bona fide photograph of the ticket. And if they win, they have an account with them. They will change the amount in their account up by the amount that they won. I want to thank State Lottery and Gaming because they have provided what I would call a voluminous but somewhat thorough amendment to this, which puts some more regulations on this, probably ones that aren't too bad to be thinking about. But what I really like about it is, unlike the last bill, State Lottery and Gaming is like, this is worth thinking about. We might actually do an amendment on this for you and help you out with it a little bit and move forward on this idea. So it kind of expands the idea of people's ability to buy a ticket more conveniently. We're pretty sure that it will increase state revenues. And with that, I think that's everything I want to say. Yep, thank you. And with that, I will conclude my testimony. Just go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Delegate Ebersol. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Ways and Means Committee. It's great to be back in this windowless cell where I spent a good 10 years of my life. You know, once I went to ECM, we had windows. It was a good living. No, it's a window. It's a joy to be with you. Thank you so much to you, to Delegate Ebersol. The State Ethics Commission requires me to say this, that I'm Bill Frick. I'm a registered lobbyist, and with me at my request is Paul Prezioso, Vice President of Compliance with Jackpot.com. And Madam Chair, we are here to bring you guys money. In 19 other jurisdictions, individuals that are eligible to buy lottery tickets can place an order for lottery products using courier services like Jackpot.com. After an order is placed via an app, those orders are fulfilled just like they would be anywhere else. A paper ticket is generated. It's held for the benefit of the customer. Couriers do not mark up those tickets or take any share of the payouts. What we've seen in these other jurisdictions is pretty consistent. There is a very significant increase in revenue to the state because we're leveraging modern digital communications to sell what are our traditional lottery products, particularly products like Powerball and Mega Millions. We've seen clear data from these other states that these sales, the sales increase does not come at the expense of the traditional brick and mortar lottery vendors. Madam Chair, we think this is a no-brainer to raise many millions in very near-term revenues, and it's a tool you can use regardless whether or not you decide to permit a state-run iLottery program. We have certain advantages because courier services don't require a state procurement process. The opportunity to receive revenues would be pretty quick. Thank you to all you for making time to talk to me about this. Thanks very much to the State Lottery and Gaming Agency for sharing their time. They were very generous with us. So I'm very grateful to Mr. Butler and his team. I have been in touch with the representatives for the vendor organizations, the retailers. What we've seen is that it wouldn't eat into their sales, but I understand their concerns, and I intend to stay engaged with them to address any of their concerns. Thank you very much, and hope for a favorable report.
Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee, my name is Paul Prezioso, and I'm the Vice President of Regulatory Affairs with lottery courier service Jackpot.com. I appreciate the opportunity you've provided to address the committee today, tell you more about our business, the benefits we can provide the state of Maryland through increased lottery sales, and answer any questions you may have. Lottery courier services like Jackpot.com allow consumers the ability to safely, securely, and conveniently order official state lottery tickets on our website or mobile application, which are then purchased in person at a licensed lottery retailer. As has already been discussed, courier services operate already in 19 states, including neighboring Washington, D.C. Lottery couriers advance the interests of the state lotteries by first reaching younger demographics and generally attracting the attention from adults who are not otherwise playing the lottery. Second, offering a more convenient convenient and safe means of playing the lottery by leveraging the advantages of the internet and responsible gambling protocols such as deposit limits, spend limits, as well as player self-exclusion programs, which have been endorsed by the National Council of Problem Gambling. And third, we supplement state lottery operating budgets and revenues through advertising support and increased ticket sales. If couriers are authorized, we will publicize and market the lottery's games and products on our digital platforms and through traditional and digital advertising channels. Lottery courier platforms are also able to direct consumers to retail locations where they can purchase tickets. Lottery couriers have demonstrated the ability to attract new customers and raise incremental revenues for the lotteries in the states in which we operate. The data is clear that we do not cannibalize sales from existing retailers, but rather are growing the player pool and reaching new demographics, resulting in revenue growth for the lotteries. If the lottery offers more channels for distribution, sales will inevitably increase. Thank you for considering the issue of lottery courier services. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, Delegate Hartman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So can the, I guess the courier, the platform, can they secure a license and just go use that license and directly make their purchase?
So the answer would depend on the Maryland Lottery. So what we would prefer to do and what we do in multiple jurisdictions is we apply through a separate legal entity for a retailer license, which is then, regulated by the lotteries and the jurisdictions in which we operate.
So in other words, you would want to secure your own license so that you're receiving the commission as you're purchasing the tickets.
That would be our preference, but it would be up to this legislature to decide that.
Yeah, they'd like to be a lottery agent if they can too, yes.
So there's no language in the bill that would prohibit that right now?
No, the language in the bill is fairly, if you read it, it's just a couple of lines, and there is an amendment, and I'd be happy to share it with you, where, as I said, lottery and gaming has come in with a number of things, requirements. I think we probably left it up to them to do that on some level, whether we take them all or not, but it shows the good faith interest on their part, and I think it would, of course, augment the bill and do the things that you're kind of asking about there.
So when winnings are deposited, so when somebody puts money in the pot, there's a commission taken, correct?
Yeah, at deposit time.
So what percent was that?
Well, that's interesting that you can say.
It can vary by jurisdiction. Couriers that I'm aware of, it ranges anywhere from 10 to 20%.
So there's no guidelines on that?
It depends on the states. Certain states require lottery commission approval to set what your commission is going to be, and you need to obtain director approval for that. So.
But when you deposit the winnings, you don't take that 10 to 20%?
No, it's only at the point of deposit into your electronic wallet.
So you said, my concern, keep pulling the rubber bands, it's eventually going to break. You say that this doesn't impact, you're projecting millions of dollars in revenue, so it's going to be a large volume of sales. I have a hard time believing that it's not going to hurt our independent agents right now, our mom and pop businesses, the small grocery store, the liquor store, et cetera. What states can we look at for that data to show that it didn't have any impact?
Yeah, so off the top of my head, and I thought I brought these notes with me, but it doesn't look like I did. I can tell you in the state of Texas, draw-based game sales have increased annually 30% since the introduction of lottery couriers. In New Jersey, I believe it's something around 20% increase in draw-based game sales since the introduction of couriers. The state of New York, I want to say around an 8 to 10% increase in lottery sales. Arkansas, something around 15%, and that is data that we can easily provide you guys because the lotteries do release reports.
So increase in overall sales, but not necessarily all that was through the platform, correct?
We cannot claim all of the increase, but I think that it just provides evidence that we're not cannibalizing existing sales. A rising tide lifts all ships.
It's in many gambling situations, when you provide people with another way to access or gamble, you don't cannibalize, you grow.
But some you're going to count. I mean, I would think that there's going to be some, lottery people that are going to say, hey, this is easier, and they're going to do it. So I think it was last year, the agents lost a pretty good chunk. They lost like a third of their commission when winners are being cashed in, and they lost a quarter point on their commission. Was there any thought in the bill to make them whole because of the windfall in revenue you're going to see, and possibly restore the lottery agents to what they were getting to help, massage through these,
grabs at their market. We heard earlier another thing for a lottery subscription, and it just keeps, at some point, what's the sense of them being there?
I will say, and I'll let you answer, I'll make them whole. I don't know that we're going to be taking away business from them necessarily. So your concept that we make them whole assumes that that's going to happen. I'm not positive of that.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that, Doug, is I think the math works out well. I mean, I think the state would come out still well ahead if you restored that, but I have not vetted that as an idea with the chair, and I think offering at this table to give away her revenues is a good way to end up floating in Spa Creek. So I think the math works, but certainly wouldn't want to. We can continue that conversation if amenable to the committee.
I think for our lottery agents, it's probably a scary day for them.
You're going to hear from a group behind us, folks that represent Royal Farms.
We have. I think Paul's mentioned this. We have track records and experience in other states. This is happening in DC right now. I think the existing agents are doing fine. So, but I understand your concern, and you're not the only member that's voiced that to me.
Delegate Wells.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I also was had some questions a little bit about the impact on our brick and mortar. But I think if you could help me understand, or I guess what I'd like to learn more about is the process of the entity you're speaking of, and I don't remember the name of the entity.
The business model is couriers. There's a number of different.
Okay, the
vendors.
couriers. So can you talk a little bit more about the process of going to purchase a ticket specifically? Because in my mind, I'm thinking about well, what if they only purchase from, in one jurisdiction, they all purchase from the same one? So how do we make sure that there's actually an opportunity for them to purchase from various vendors so they're spreading the love in terms of the lottery sales of the brick and mortar?
Yeah, so the way that our platform works and that the other courier platform works is that we affiliate with a single retailer. That's not to say that you couldn't affiliate with multiple, but logistically it's just much easier if you fulfill your tickets out of a single processing location. And as far as the process, you have to first register for an account. To register for an account, you need to give your first name, last name, email, date of birth, street address, city, zip code, state, and a mobile phone number. You are then you go through our Know Your Customer protocol. We use a third-party vendor called Ideology. It's a similar vendor that a lot of the sports betting companies use to verify that you are who you say you are, that you're 18 years of age, that you're a natural person, that you're not on any OFAC lists. So we have very strict protocols on who can place orders.
I appreciate that. No, I'm more curious about the process of actually purchasing from, how does a courier buy the ticket itself? For instance, if I'm a courier, I'm not doing what I'm doing now, how do I decide which stores or who I vend from? Who do I buy the ticket from?
Yes, so for us personally.
Not who I buy them for, but who do I buy them from?
Yes, which retailer, right? Is that your question?
Which retailer?
For us, as I said earlier, our preference would be to open up a retail location in Maryland, which would then be where we would purchase the ticket from.
So it would be from one retailer?
That would be our goal, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Delegate Buckle.
Thank you. And when you said open up a retail location, what does that mean? I mean, is it just is it just an office, a brick building with a few machines running, somebody's coming in and out, you're just cashing lottery tickets, or are you opening something that provides jobs? Because the revenue is important, people playing, convenience is important, but there's another factor here of a lot of these people who lottery is just a component of their business. They employ people. They pay us a lot of taxes, a lot of ancillary revenue, property taxes, a lot of other things, because they have stores or service stations or whatever it is. When you said we'd like to open a retail location, so if you just open one office space in Towson, that's not really providing any jobs or any services or any ancillary things in Cumberland or Howard County or Montgomery County. So what do you guys envision? What do you normally do in other states when you say we open a retail location?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I'm happy to dispel the myth that we're just going to open up a windowless office. So every lottery, Maryland lottery included, all the statutes require that retailers have to sell products other than just lottery products. So in other states where we've done this, we have an actual physical convenience store open to the public, open 7 days a week, normal operating business hours. We employ people front of the house, just like like any store clerk would if you were to walk down to the local convenience store at the corner. We sell chips, soda, knickknacks, whatever you would get at any other convenience store. So we employ, typically, depends on the jurisdiction, but 10 to 15 full-time employees in these convenience stores, not just working front of house, but also in the back of the house, which is where we do our ticket ordering and processing, yeah.
Okay, thank you for the
They could also
clarification.
sell tickets to people who are not, okay, because they're a lottery
Sure,
agent.
people can just wander in.
Just to point that out, right.
But it's a distinction between, at least to my knowledge, most of the people who we think of as lottery agents, retailers, lottery is just, it's a little piece of their business. It might wind up being real money, particularly if they cash a big winning ticket, but it's just a piece of what they're doing. They may have gas stations, people coming to get milk, doing whatever. You'll have a store that'll have something, but I think it would be fair to say the bulk of what you're doing, your model is to facilitate this lottery courier agency as opposed to be a pure retailer per se.
That would be fair, but anyone can buy any of our products off the shelves in the store.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Madam Chair.
Folks signed up to testify in opposition to the bill: Sarah Price, Mike O'Halloran, Matthew Pica, John Pica, I don't know if you're both coming up, Kirk McCulley, and Steve Wise.
Madam Chair, if it pleases you, I'll go ahead and start it off. Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, my name is Mike O'Halloran. Here today, I'm representing the Mid-Atlantic Petroleum Distributors Association, which, unlike its name, we actually represent the convenience store operators. No, we represent convenience store operators, and as much, we are also retail lottery agents. You have my written testimony in front of you. I have my other colleagues that can certainly probably speak more intelligibly than I can about this, probably even pronounce that word better. But the two main points I want to bring up are, number one, the issue of cannibalizing our current brick and mortar retail lottery agents. You heard from the proponents that in other states, they actually set up their own shop just so it sounds like it can act as a central collection unit for all of these purchases. And the other point I'll make about our retail brick and mortar locations is they're not just revenue generators for the state lottery. They are also revenue generators from sales tax, from motor fuel tax. So when this little piece of the lottery revenue, and we talk about, well, there's the chance for lottery revenue to increase, we would see that as at the expense of the ancillary products that folks come into our stores to buy, like your favorite snacks, like gas to fill up. And last but not least, we talk about, new players and reaching new players. From our standpoint, when you reach these new players, it's not like they become our players. They are new players, and they are not going to come into our store. They are just going to stay on their phone. We want to bring them into our stores so that they can purchase these other products, which also provide revenue to the state. So with that, I'll wrap up and respectfully request an unfavorable report for House Bill 539.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, and honorable members of the committee. Sarah Price here on behalf of the Maryland Retailers Alliance. So we do represent lottery agents like convenience stores and grocery stores who we believe would be negatively impacted by this proposal. We have heard that the stated goal of the proponents is to open up their own brick and mortar store and process as many online lottery sales as possible. I'm hard-pressed to see how this would not result in cannibalization from our businesses. At the convenience store level, lottery sales make up an average of almost 10% of annual sales, and about 95% of lottery purchases at convenience stores also include other items in the transactions. So removing these sales in any way from these lottery agents that we already have operating in the state could have a major impact on operations, especially as this industry is already adjusting to the decrease in commissions that was passed by this legislature last year. I don't want to be too repetitive among the panel, so I would just urge an unfavorable report based on the projected negative impact on this industry. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Kurt McCauley. I represent service stations, convenience stores in the state of Maryland. This company, they say it's a courier service that's going to take care of them. And courier service to me means getting in a car and delivering something to someone. But the places they work at right now, everything's done online. This company, Jackpot.com, is based in Malta. Not even quite sure where that is. Not the United States, I can tell you that. And they have locations now, but all of them, it's online transactions. They deliver a copy of the ticket to the customer. Actually, that's done electronically. And I don't see how this bill could even work under the current laws. There would have to be some law changes as far as electronic transfer of lottery tickets and everything. The earlier bill you heard, HB 618, could actually evolve into that. So I ask you to look very carefully at all these bills and make sure that they're not going to. We would love to, as the stores, my store owners would love to be able to sell subscriptions, sell a gift card. We're talking about making money about a gift card. Every store in the world sells gift cards. I was in the Home Depot the other day. They must have had 100 different gift cards there. But a gift card in a lottery location would be a good item. I mean, it would just be really good. And but we're willing to do these things. But this company, Jackpot.com, they're going to scavenge our customers. And with that, like Mike said, they're going to scavenge a lot of other things with it. So we ask for a non-favorable. You have my written, so I'll cut it off there, and thank you.
Madam Chair, good afternoon, members of the committee. I'm Steve Wise. I represent the Maryland State Licensed Beverage Association. So these are all the alcoholic beverage retailers in the state. We share the sentiments of the witnesses that have already testified. It sounds to me like the lottery has some amendments which we haven't seen, but if you go down this path, which we ask you not to, we would ask you to put some pretty important protections in there, which again, may be in the lottery's amendments, I don't know, but one of those should be they should not be able to obtain a lottery agent license and set up the facility that they talk about. If they're going to be buying tickets, it should be from your existing agents and not at their expense. And in addition to that, we think you should have a restriction on the agent paying to Jackpots or whoever the company may be any type of inducement to buy the tickets at one particular store, because that's again going to favor a larger retailer over a small store that wouldn't be able to pay that same level of inducement. So again, we ask you not to do it, but if you go down that path, there's some essential protections you should put in for the smaller businesses in the state. With that, I thank you for your time and happy to answer any questions.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for another opportunity to testify. I'm here representing Royal Farms in opposition to House Bill 539. And other than what the panel added, I'd just like to add, this bill raises concerns from local businesses that it creates an unfair advantage for these third-party entities, while also hurting local businesses that rely on lottery sales to drive this foot traffic. For this reason, I am urging an unfavorable report on House Bill 39. Thank you.
Okay, are there any questions from the committee? Delegate Feldmark?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess my question is probably for Mr. O'Halloran or perhaps Ms. Price. So this question of the courier also being an agent and having their own retail sales, if that were to be amended out, even if existing lottery agents had the ability to either, enter into their own agreements or even provide sort of courier service, I think I heard that you still wouldn't be interested in that because of losing the sort of ancillary sales associated with coming in to purchase a ticket. Is that correct?
That is correct. At the current time, Jackpot.com has signed up as an exclusive deal with 7-Eleven's 13,000 stores. So that would pretty much eliminate individual stores from selling. And they also have a deal with a Canadian firm, Circle K. So they go out and evidently get contracts with stores, and one of them is the 7-Eleven. You can go online and look at jackpot.com lottery, and it gives you all the information, what they do, where they're based and everything. So, yes, thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes the hearing on House Bill 539. And for our final bill of the day, Delegate Vogel, House Bill 590. And you have Denise Riley and Nettie Harris.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, committee members. We're going to keep this very quick. House Bill 590 expands who is eligible for the retirement income tax subtraction modification for public safety employees to include 911 specialists, recognizing the important work that they do in our communities alongside as public safety personnel. I just want to quickly point out 2 lines in the written testimony, one from the Maryland Chiefs of Police, noting that 911 specialists, this bill acknowledges and shows respect for the important work that 911 specialists do on a daily basis during emergency situations, as well as the Maryland State Firefighters Association. Their written testimony notes that MSFA looks at the 911 specialists as the first responder, as they are the people to have contact with a person who is in need of assistance first before other first responders arrive. I will note that the fiscal note does not necessarily show a number, which is good. It acknowledges that the Comptroller's Office can implement this bill's change with existing budget resources, and I will let my panel explain why this bill is of great import to our first responders across the state, and I urge a favorable report.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Vice Chair. I'm Denise Riley. I'm the Director of Policy and Legislative Affairs for the American Federation of Teachers in Maryland. Our federation represents city, county, and state employees throughout Maryland. Our affiliate unions, the Baltimore County Federation of Public Employees and the City Union of Baltimore, along with the unions AFSCME and McGeo, represent 911 specialists across the state. Right now, our 911 centers are understaffed. In fact, with the exception of Ms. Harris, our members could not be here today because taking time off requires significant advance notice. Budget constraints at the city and county levels limit how much these specialists can be paid. The average salary in Maryland is just $53,000 a year, hardly enough given the demands of the job. We must do more to recruit and retain the professionals who staff our 911 centers. 911 specialists are true first responders. They remain calm in the most high-stakes, often violent situations. They coordinate emergency responses, provide medical instructions, and direct police and firefighters in real time. Their role is essential to public safety. Yet the stress of the work leads to high turnover. We are losing experienced, well-trained specialists when we need them the most. To keep our communities safe, we must do more to retain them. Including 911 specialists in the Hometown Heroes Act is one way to recognize their service and to provide an incentive to stay on the job. For these reasons, AFT Maryland urges a favorable report on HB 590. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, Chair Arterberry, Vice Chair Wilkes, and members of the House Ways and Means Committee. My name is Nettie Harris, and I am 911 specialist working in the City of Baltimore for the past 23 years. I am also a proud member of the City Union of Baltimore, AFT Local 800, and the union that represents the number of member cities employees, including the dedicated 911 center specialists. I am also, I called, on this committee to issue a favorable report of HB 590, the bill that would include the state's first responders who work in the state's different 911 call centers into the Hometown Heroes Acts that allow a bit of a tax break on their retirement incomes. I believe you have my written testimony, so also let me enlighten you on a few points and how I can answer any questions about my work. 911 operators handle on a daily basis police, fire, and ambulance calls. On a daily basis, we help deliver babies. We talk people through CPR to save one's lives. We help people through active domestic violence situations as well as while they're happening. In 2013, I had to listen in horror and listen to a family as they were brutally murdered, including a 5-month-old baby in Pigtown, over $10. Our job is very stressful. For myself and my coworkers are subject to very traumatic situations. Many people do not stay on board because of this, and we need more to make sure that these centers remain staffed. We are, by definition, the first responders to crisis situations. This bill, this HB Bill 590, recognizes the issues and will give the 911 retirees the same tax benefits that the state gives into our other first responders. In order to recruit and retain the best and most qualified individuals for this role, I ask in favor of report to Bill HB 590. Thank you. And again, I'm open to any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Okay, thank you very much. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 590. That concludes the bill hearings for the Ways and Means Committee today. We will take a 5-minute break and come back